Symphony of the Soul, From Disadvantaged Child to Virtuoso. Chapter 1, A Gift for Music. Rosie finished playing a simple melody on the piano and turned to her music class with a smile. A dozen young faces looked back at her, some attentive, some distracted. She was used to the usual mix at the community center. Some kids soaked up her lessons with joy, while others took more coaxing. One face in particular caught Rosie's eye. Thomas, a quiet 10-year-old boy sitting at the front, was staring raptly at the piano keys. As Rosie explained the next activity to the group, she noticed Thomas's fingers moving subtly, as if echoing the notes she had just played. Rosie brought the children up in groups to try playing the melody themselves. Most tapped out choppy, arrhythmic versions, quickly losing focus. But when Thomas placed his small hands on the ivory keys, the notes flowed gracefully. He closed his eyes, playing by ear what Rosie had demonstrated. She was stunned by his innate musicality. As the class filed out, Thomas lingered by the piano, tentatively touching a few keys with the delicate awe of a sculptor molding clay. "You have a wonderful gift, Thomas," Rosie said kindly. Thomas looked up, eyes brightening. "I wish I could play piano like you. We don't have one at home, but I like to come hear you play." Rosie's heart went out to this soft-spoken child with such instinctive talent. On a teacher's salary, she knew private lessons would be impossible for his low-income family. Unless someone offered to teach him for free, Rosie placed a hand on his slight shoulder. "How would you like to take lessons with me, as my student?" Thomas could scarcely nod his enthusiasm before his mother appeared, ushering him out the door. But Rosie was determined. She would reach out to his family right away. Because raw talent like Thomas's should be nurtured, not neglected. After many conversations, Thomas's mother agreed to weekly lessons. The pure joy on Thomas's face the following Saturday confirmed Rosie's intuition. She vowed to cultivate the spark of musical genius she saw within him. Chapter 2, Budding Bond. At Thomas's first piano lesson, Rosie stuck to the beginner book, carefully reviewing notes and fingering. Thomas listened intently, focused beyond his years. During their second lesson though, Rosie allowed him to move freely from the structured drills. "Play me anything you'd like," she encouraged. Hesitantly at first, then growing bolder, Thomas began exploring melodies across the keys. The structured teacher-student dynamic melted away as Rosie witnessed her prodigy student's raw talent unfold. Thomas's playing was untrained, but emotionally rich and complex. His small hands evoked spirited passages, then slowed to brooding, poignant bridges. Rosie was astonished that someone so young could convey such musical maturity. "You have a gift, Thomas," Rosie affirmed. He beamed under her praise. From then on, Rosie allowed Thomas greater creative freedom during lessons. She gave tips and guidance, but recognized that his talent blossomed when allowed to roam the keys improvisationally. Over months, their formal teacher-student relationship organically shifted into a warm friendship. Thomas began confiding in Rosie about school, family struggles, his hopes and dreams. She became invested not just in nurturing his talent, but in his personal growth. Meanwhile, Thomas's passion and intuitive playing style influenced Rosie's own piano work. She found new vitality and courage to take risks, to play from her heart rather than sticking to rigid pieces. Their weekly time together became the highlight of both their weeks, an oasis of joy and inspiration. But their biggest test was still to come. Chapter 3, Pushing Through. Just as Thomas was preparing for an upcoming recital, tragic news arrived. His family was moving across the city next month. Thomas came to his lesson in tears. Rosie's heart broke, imagining her star student losing access to piano instruction. "We'll figure this out," she resolved, giving him a reassuring hug. Though uncertain how, Rosie refused to let raw talent go to waste. The new distance was substantial, requiring a long subway and bus commute. But Rosie insisted they continue, even offering to go to Thomas's neighborhood instead. His family, unable to pay for lessons, remained wary but grateful. The first few post-move lessons were rocky. Thomas frequently arrived late, flustered from navigating public transit alone. But he always persevered, apologizing profusely and pouring his heart into their shortened sessions. Rosie marveled at Thomas's dedication. No matter what obstacles he faced, he found a way to show up eager to play, never making excuses. His maturity and focus spoke volumes about his character. Then tragedy struck again. Rosie became ill, hospitalized for weeks. She fretted endlessly about Thomas until one day, he appeared at her bedside, clutching a handmade card and wilted flowers. Thomas's smile uplifted her more than any medicine could. "I'll wait for you," he said. Rosie wept, touched by how their bond went both ways. When discharged, Rosie redoubled her efforts, increasing Thomas's lesson length to make up for lost time. Neither distance nor health could diminish this boy's spark. She would fan his abilities, no matter what. Chapter 4: Taking the Stage. A year after Thomas's first lesson, Rosie decided it was time. She invited him to perform at her upcoming student recital on stage at the community college auditorium. Thomas went pale, then flushed with excitement. "Are you sure I'm ready?" he asked nervously. "More than ready," Rosie affirmed. Diligent as ever, Thomas spent weeks preparing, carefully selecting a piece that highlighted his technical growth yet still allowed room for his unique emotional expressiveness. Finally, the big day arrived. Peering from behind the curtain at the gathered crowd, Thomas clutched Rosie's hand, every nerve on edge. "You've got this," she whispered as he walked on stage. At first, the audience murmured curiously, surprised by the tiny, shy-looking boy. But within moments, Thomas launched into his piece, fingers dancing across the keys. Jaws dropped at the passion and complexity flowing from someone so young. The final notes faded into stunned silence, then thunderous applause. Thomas scurried off stage and straight into Rosie's open arms. "I did it!" he cried through happy tears. Backstage, even seasoned performers lined up to compliment Thomas's raw talent. But he only had eyes for his teacher. In the years that followed, Thomas earned a full scholarship to a prestigious performing arts academy. At graduation, he accepted his diploma, then turned to the audience. "I dedicate all I have achieved to my first teacher, Rosie, the one who gave me the priceless gift of music." Tears streaming down her face, Rosie applauded proudly. She always knew greatness lay within Thomas. She was just blessed to help ignite that spark into a flame. His inspirational journey renewed her own lifelong passion for teaching. Chapter 5: An Unexpected Harmony. Rosie strolled along the park path, enjoying the warmth of spring. Children laughed on the playground as parents chatted happily on benches. Catching her reflection in a pond, she sighed. 10 years since retiring from teaching, though in her heart she was still that passionate music instructor. A familiar melody floated from the gazebo up ahead, played with such virtuosity that Rosie drifted toward it as if in a trance. That style, the emotive flair, could it be? She climbed the gazebo steps, gasping as she took in the pianist's profile. Though 10 years older, his intense focus as his hands flew across the keys was unmistakable. "Thomas," she said tentatively. He glanced up, notes freezing abruptly. A flicker of recognition, then a wide grin spread across his face. "Ms. Rosie." In an instant Thomas became that eager boy again, rushing to embrace her. Rosie laughed, overjoyed. As they reminisced, she learned of his meteoric rise performing with symphonies worldwide since graduating. Yet he still recalled their early lessons vividly. "This was my second home," Thomas gestured around the gazebo. "I'd come here to play, imagining it was our classroom again." Rosie's heart swelled, realizing how much their time together still resonated for him, as it did for her. "Play for me?" she asked. Nodding, Thomas launched into a breathtakingly complex piece, infusing it with the depth and sensitivity she remembered in him. Closing her eyes, Rosie was transported back 10 years, to the modest gazebo where it all began. A crowd gathered, drawn in by the impromptu concert. When Thomas finished, wild applause erupted. But he only had eyes for Rosie, who hugged him tightly. "Some talents we just sense," she whispered. Their unexpected reunion was a perfect reminder of why she taught, to send beautiful music out into the world.